Hi, everybody. I'm Kelley Bollen. I'm a certified animal behavior consultant. And today I'm talking about dog behavior and dog park safety, a really important talk for anyone who owns a dog, but especially if you take your dog to the dog park. So thank you for tuning in. And this lecture is sponsored by Options Veterinary Care. Options is the only nonprofit, low-cost veterinary clinic in Reno. In fact, it might be the only one in the state of Nevada. And they do amazing work helping people who can't afford veterinary care for their pets. And so if you don't know about options, please do check them out. A donation of any size helps care for animals that would otherwise not get that care. So please check out Options Veterinary Care. And this talk is dedicated to Riva, who lost her life at a dog park. And so we are dedicating this talk to Riva. So we'll start with talking about dog behavior. So everyone who owns a dog should learn as much as they can about dog behavior. It's that simple. The problem is most people do not. Most people who own a dog don't bother learning anything about why dogs do what they do, how they learn, how best to train them. And that's really a shame because we have a lot of conflict with dogs sometimes because of our lack of knowledge. So again, I thank you for wanting to learn and listening to this lecture. The thing to me that's the most important for any dog owner to learn about is to learn to read their body language. We know dogs speak with their bodies all the time, but in order to know what the dog is saying, you have to learn how to read their body language. And so you need to learn to read your dog's body language as well as all the other dogs that interact with your dog so you know what is going on. It's the responsible thing to do as a dog owner. So that's what I'm going to start with in this lecture. And with the help of Dr. Stanley Coren and pictures from his book called How to Speak Dog, I'm going to go through some body language information with you. So we start with the relaxed dog, our baseline dog. And if you look at this dog, he's got loose muscles, he's got even weight distribution on all four paws, his tail is relaxed. And if we look at his face, he has what we call an open, relaxed face. And that means that there's no muscle tension in his face, no muscle tension in his eyes, no furrowed brow, a loose, relaxed mouth. So it's a relaxed dog. So here's a picture of a relaxed dog. So again, no muscle tension, tail relaxed, open, happy face. Now, this position is what we call a play bow. And a play bow is when the front end goes down and the back end is up, and we got this happy look on the dog's face. And that play bow is an invitation to play. So when dogs want to play with another dog, they will play bow. They will also play bow to people, to cats, to the squirrel. It doesn't matter. If they think this being will play with them, they'll play bow to this being. So play bows are super cute, and we really like to watch dogs play bow. Now, the other time that dogs play bow is during play, because when dogs are playing, it can get really rough. And so the dogs have to have a way to communicate with each other that they're still playing. So you'll see play bows to initiate play, but you'll also see play bows to keep play going. So you'll see a dog flash a play bow before they kind of grab the other dog by the neck and take them down to the ground. They're constantly communicating if they have good skills with other dogs. So look for those play bows. Now, this picture is showing what we call passive appeasement. And appeasement signals are displayed by a dog who feels threatened or overwhelmed by a social encounter. It can be a social encounter with a human or a social encounter with another dog. And so what do we see here? We see the dog is laying down, he exposes belly, his tail is tucked, his little front wrists are bent. If we look at his head, his ears are back, His eyes are partially closed. His mouth is closed with the corners of the mouth pulled back. And he might even dribble out a few drops of urine because when a dog feels really threatened, their urinary sphincter will relax and sometimes little drips of urine come out. So this is telling you the dog is nervous about something. And so if we look at this dog again with the exposed belly, the tucked tail, the bent wrists, the ears back, the mouth closed with the corners pulled back, this is not a dog who's submitting to you. This is a dog who's saying, "Oh my God, you're so scary, please back off." And so we need to understand what this means so that we don't force ourselves on a dog who already feels threatened. Now, a misinterpretation of this behavior is often that the dog wants a belly rub. But I want you to look at what a dog looks like when they want a belly rub. They're completely relaxed, their limbs are open and loose. And so you can tell the difference by looking at the tucked tail and the ears back and the big, huge, wide pupils that this dog on the left is feeling threatened and doesn't want a belly rub. Now, this dog is showing what we call active appeasement. And again, those appeasement signals tell you the dog is feeling threatened or overwhelmed. But this dog didn't lay on the ground to expose his belly. But we see a lowered body posture, we see a low tail, we see a low head, we see ears are back, mouth is closed with those corners pulled back, and his tongue is going to flick out sometimes. And you might even see this classic paw raise where they raise one paw. Sometimes they interchange which paw they're raising. And depending on the surface, you might even see sweaty footprints because the only place dogs sweat is through their foot pads. And when a dog is nervous, they're going to sweat just like we do. So these dogs are showing active appeasement. Notice the crouched body, the tucked tail, the head lower than the plane of the back, the ears back, the mouth closed. These dogs are feeling threatened. Now, this dog is showing stress and anxiety with similar body postures to the last dog. We see the lowered body posture, the low tucked tail, the ears back, the head low, but we see the dog like rapid panting. And that tells you that dog is really anxious. Now, it could be a social stressor. It could also be an environmental stressor, like they're going into the vet clinic or they're going into the dog park when they're not comfortable at the dog park. You got to pay attention to your dog's body language. All right. So when we see everything low, we see that rapid stress panting, we know that the dog is not feeling real comfortable at the moment. Now, this dog is showing what we call defensive aggression. And defensive aggression comes from the emotion of fear. So when a dog is afraid, they'll show these kinds of signals to try to get the scary thing, whether it's a human or a dog, to back away. Right? So, but what do we see? We see that lowered body posture. We see a tucked tail. We see the low head like we saw in some of those other dogs. But now we have the hackles are up, so the hair on their back stands up. We see the ears back. The corner of the mouth is pulled back, but now the dog is showing teeth and probably growling. So this dog is feeling very scared and threatened and possibly cornered, and it feels he has no choice than to try to scare you away because he can't get away from you. And that is called defensive aggression. So when we have dogs that are showing defensive aggression, everything goes back. Their body weight goes back, their movement backs away from you, their ears go back, even the corners of their mouth go back. And they're going to show their teeth to try to scare you away. That's defensive aggression from fear. And then we have offensive aggression, and offensive aggression stems from the emotion of anger. And so what do we see in this dog? We see a stiff body. We see a more weight shifting forward onto those front paws. We see that high flag tail. We see it hackles up along the back and even through the tail. We see a very high head with ears forward, and even if the corners of the mouth come forward, and he's showing his teeth and probably growling also. And so this dog is trying to decrease the distance between you and him because everything's coming forward. So the scared dog, everything goes back. The offensive dog, everything goes forward. The body weight forward, the movement forward, the ears forward, even the corners of the mouth are forward. Now let's look at individual body parts. Even though I pointed some out, I want to look deeper at individual body parts. We'll start with the ears. So when dogs are afraid, they'll flatten their ears back. And when dogs are aroused, alert, or angry, they're going to hold their ears up high with the openings facing forward. But of course, this is only true of dogs that have that kind of ear. That's the wild type ear. We call it the pricked ear, and that's like wolves have. But because of selective breeding, we have a lot of dogs, breeds, and mixes that have naturally floppy ears. Maybe not to the extent of the Basset Hound, but what this means when they have long, floppy ears is we can't tell how they feel based on their ears. That's why we have to look at everything else. So now let's move to their tail. And so, like I said a couple of times, when they tuck their tail between their legs, that's telling you that they are frightened. And the tails of alert, aroused, or agitated dogs are going to be held up high. They're going to be up, like we call it flag tail. So it's way up high. Now let's talk about the wagging tail, because people think as long as a dog is wagging their tail, they must be friendly. And a lot of people get bitten because they approach a dog and try to pet a dog who's wagging their tail. So we have to learn a little bit more about the differences in tail wags. So the rule of thumb is if the tail is below the horizon of the back and wagging, it is usually a friendly wag. But if the tail is at or above the horizon of the back and wagging, that just tells you the dog is aroused. And that can be good arousal or bad arousal. So pay attention to everything else about the dog. But if you see a high flag tail, that's even if it's stiffly wagging, that is usually aggressive arousal. So you will not approach a dog who has a high flag tail, even if it's wagging a bit. So again, we look at this picture, we see below the horizon of the back and wagging, a nice, relaxed, friendly wag. If it's a real happy dog, you'll see it wag much faster, and sometimes they even do a helicopter. But when their tail is up and wagging, that just tells you that dog is aroused. And they can even wag their tail when they're afraid and it's tucked between their legs. Now let's zone in on their faces and their mouths, right? So when we see a happy, relaxed face, what that means is there's no muscle tension in the dog's face, no muscle tension around their eyes, no muscle tension in their jaw. They're just relaxed, as opposed to a dog who is worried or anxious. And we can see the difference because we can see the furrowed brow, we see the tension around the eyes, we see the closed, tense mouth. We can tell when we look at a dog's face if they're feeling worried or anxious about something. And then we have the faces of the angry or fearful dogs where they're showing their teeth. And so, as I said in a couple of the slides, when the corner of the mouth comes forward and they're just showing their front teeth, that is more offensive, everything forward. And when the corner of the mouth go back and they show you all of their teeth, that is defensive. And so everything forward offensive, everything back defensive, including the corners of their mouth. And when they're showing teeth, that can be significant. The fearful dog just wants you to go away. The offensive dog might be charging you. And so you want to know the difference. Now, warning behaviors that tell you the dog is upset: snarling, which we talked about, which is showing teeth, growling, lunging, snapping in the air. These things are warning behaviors. And so if you don't want to get bitten by a dog, you have to heed the warning signals. So when you hear growling or see snarling or the dog is lunging and air snapping, get away from the dog. And if the dog is doing this to your dog, get your dog away from that dog. But I also want to talk about more subtle signs that the dog is uncomfortable. So we'll start with their eyes. So when you can see a big part of the whites of their eyes, that is what we call whale eye. And whale eye happens when the dog is nervous about something. So they either turn their head to try to avoid you, but they don't want to take their eye off of you. Or let's say they're eating their food, so they leave their head in the bowl, but they they rotate their eyes up. And so either the head moves and the eyes don't, or the eyes move and the head doesn't, produces whale eye, and it tells you that the dog is uncomfortable. When we look at the mouth, I've said a couple of times, a closed, tense mouth is a tense dog. Now, not necessarily, I mean, dogs can have closed mouths, but you don't see them like clenching their jaw. Closed, tense mouth, tense dog. And then when we look at their body, if their muscles are all tight and their body is really stiff, that is a tense dog. And so you want to be able to see that musculature, and it goes from loose and relaxed to stiff. You know that something just happened to make that dog feel tense about something. Now, again, weight shifting forward is offensive. Weight shifting back is defensive. So when you're watching dogs at the dog park, you want to be aware of what you're looking at. Now, dogs also show these signals we call displacement behaviors. And displacement behaviors are stress signals. It tells you the dog is stressed. And you want to pay attention to these things because it's good to know what's stressing out your dog. Most people don't even notice these things. The first one is a tongue flick, where they flick their tongue out like they're wetting their lips, but they're not. Now, these stress signals usually happen in a social situation with humans or another dog. And so you'll see the tongue flicking out. Or they lick their lips like they just had a meal, but they didn't just have a meal. You see what we call lip licking. Or they yawn when they're not tired. Obviously, dogs yawn when they're tired, just like we do. But in a social situation, if a dog yawns, that's probably a stress yawn. And shaking off when not wet. Of course, dogs shake off when their hair coat gets wet, but if they do a shake off when they're not wet, that tells you that they're getting stressed. It is a displacement signal, tells you they're stressed. So look at this little video and look at the husky, and all of a sudden, a big old shake off, mostly because the Rottweiler is kind of being more offensive and stiff, and it's a stress shake off. Sometimes scratching without any skin irritation sometimes can be hard to know the difference. But again, in a social situation, if a dog all of a sudden starts scratching, it is usually stress scratching. So if we look at the dog scratching, but more importantly, look at the other dog who's stiff with a high tail. So that dog didn't suddenly have an itch. That's stress scratching because the other dog is stressing her out. In addition to the displacement signals, we see avoidance behaviors like turning their head or turning their whole body. And this also can produce that whale eye I talked about. And so look at the tan dog just turns its head to say, I'm not interested in interacting. The border collie takes a quick sniff and then leaves. It reads the signal that I don't want to interact with you. Something as simple as just turning their head. Okay, with all of that in your knowledge banks now, you want to really pay attention to your dog from now on and watch their body language. Know what's normal, know when they're stressed, recognize their signals, right? Because when we're going to introduce dogs, we also want to pay attention to that stuff. So we'll start with proper doggy greetings. And so dogs, social dogs, dogs who like other dogs, will have a loose body and a low wagging tail. They don't approach straight on. They kind of curve around a little bit because a straight on approach can be really threatening. And then they'll sniff each other's mouths, and then they usually, circle around and sniff each other's rear. And from there, we can see play, like one of them play bows, or disinterest. Thanks for letting me know who you are. Now I don't care about you. Okay. And so what we see is we see the dogs first again, they'll sniff each other's faces or around each other's mouths. and see the curvature of their spines when they met. They're not straight on. And then, of course, ultimately, they're going to get down to that information center that tells them a lot about the other dog. And so they're going to sniff the rear of the other dog. And sometimes we see what I call a mutual handshake. So we see both dogs are sniffing each other's rear. And of course, we have this nice curvature of their spine. Now, dogs who are not really dog social are going to have a high flag tail. They can have a stiff body, and their ears and body weight are going to be forward. And they're going to give the other dog intense, fixated eye contact, which is a threat in dog language. And they're going to move straight at the other dog with a straight spine. And so if we look at some of these pictures, you can see the difference between what we just saw. We see that straight spine, they're kind of threatening each other. And so you want to be able to look up at how does your dog greet others and how do others greet your dog, and watch for signs of tension. When you see two dogs sniffing each other or looking at each other, you might not think anything of it. But when you have that closed, tense mouth and that fixated gaze at each other, that is a challenge. And a fight can break out right here. And so we got to be really careful and pay attention to what our dogs and other dogs are saying. Right? See, he went straight at the tan dog. He's got a stiff body, a high flag tail, a closed mouth, ears forward. The other dog is being appropriate, but this guy is not. And as he's pulled away, he snaps at the other dog. So that's the difference between a good greeting and a bad greeting. All right, and all of that now brings me to the dog park, and we need to talk about dog park safety. If you're going to go to the dog park, it's really important that you learn all this stuff to keep your dogs safe. All right, so in Reno, we have lots of different dog parks, and other communities have lots of different dog parks. And so there's lots of places where you can take your dog off leash to socialize with other dogs. But what's important, no matter where you go, is to make sure you know the rules of the dog park. So look at the website about the dog park and read the rules and make sure you follow those rules. So who are dog parks for? Well, dog parks are for dogs who are friendly towards other dogs and enjoy their company. All right, that's who these dog parks are for. Unfortunately, most people think that all dogs should go to the dog park, and not all dogs should go to the dog park. The ones who enjoy it there, that have fun there, that's who it's for. A dog park should not be a free-for-all. You know, the owners have to supervise and manage their dog. Going to the dog park, releasing your dog and playing on your phone or chit-chatting with somebody else and not watching your dog is irresponsible. It's important that you watch your dog and you manage your dog. It should not be a place where dogs practice bad behavior. And this happens all the time in dog parks. A bully dog will go to the dog park and every day bully other dogs. So he's practicing it. He's getting to be a better bully through all that practice. It should not be a place where dogs learn to be afraid of other dogs. And dogs learn this all the time at dog parks. And it should not be a place where dogs learn that they need to defend themselves against other dogs using aggressive behavior. Dogs can actually be ruined at the dog park if they're attacked and they feel like from now on, I have to defend myself. And they start showing aggressive behavior to other dogs. It happens all the time. So who should not go to the dog park? Any dog with a history of aggressive behavior to other dogs should not go to the dog park. Any dog who instigated a fight during a previous visit at the park, that's it. You instigate a fight, you're done. You don't go to the dog park anymore to keep doing that. Any dog who joined in on the fight shouldn't go back to the dog park because that means if some event happens, boy, they're right in there in the mix and adding to the aggression and the arousal and the dangerousness of the fight. And any dog who seems uncomfortable or afraid of other dogs. So many people bring their shy, fearful dogs to the dog park thinking, oh, he just needs to learn, from other dogs. So we're just going to bring him to the dog park. Well, maybe that dog's afraid of other dogs, wasn't socialized well to other dogs, or was attacked by a dog one time in their past. So you do not want to take these dogs to the dog park. So how do you know if your dog is uncomfortable or afraid? Again, you have to learn how to read body language and signaling. And the dog's body language is going to be telling you how they feel in any situation. So it's up to you to learn how to read your dog at the park and everywhere, including your home. Read your dog. Remember the things. Watch the video again so you can go over and really understand how to read body language. So what appropriate play looks like is important. We should see lots of play bows, like I talked about earlier. We want to see play bows to initiate play. We also will see play bows during play for dogs that are playing really well. We should see loose bodies with happy faces. So we remember this is supposed to be fun for the dogs. And we should see bouncy, loose bodies because that's what dog play looks like. And if that's not what you're seeing at the dog park, whether it's from you, your dog, or someone else's dog who's trying to interact with your dog, leave the dog park. It's supposed to be fun. You should see position switching. So one dog's on the top 1 second and then they switch. It's not just one dog constantly on top harassing the other dog. And you should see them take their own breaks. So when one dog gets tired, it lays down and takes a break. Usually all the other dogs who are playing take a break too. If your dog's not taking a break, when the other dogs obviously want one, go leash your dog up and make them take a break. It's really important that the breaks happen. You also want to know your dog's play style. So there's basically two play styles. There's the dogs that like to wrestle, and they're really noisy and physical. They use their mouth a lot. And then there are the dogs that like to be chased or chase other dogs. And when you know your dog's play style, you want to try to seek out dogs that have a similar play style when you're at the dog park. Okay, the no-nos at the dog park. For one, do not ever bring your dog's toys to the dog park. You can take them to an empty park and throw the ball. You can go into a ball field somewhere and throw a ball or a frisbee. At the dog park, no toys, because dogs can be possessive of their toys with other dogs, and that can trigger resource guarding, which can trigger a fight. Also, check the park for other things that dogs might fight over. And so somebody left a tennis ball there yesterday, chuck it over the fence. There's a big old stick everyone seems interested in, chuck it over the fence. Don't leave things around that the dogs might fight over. No small dogs in the large dog area. This is really not okay. Even if you have a large dog and a small dog at home and they get along great, so you bring them to the dog park together, the small dog is vulnerable to the other dogs in the park because sometimes we see what we call predatory drift. Predatory drift is when a little running dog, especially if he's yelping because he's scared, starts tearing past and it triggers the other dog to predatory behavior. So we call that predatory drift because the dogs drift into predatory behavior against a conspecific, another dog, right? And that's not normal, but that's what happens. And that can end in death. And so once a dog is triggered to predatory behavior towards a small dog, we can have tragedies, and there are lots of these tragedies at dog parks. So this is not okay. So this little dog who only has 3 legs is at the dog park, and this Malamute is being very stiff with this dog and cornering the dog. Luckily, this little dog has a friend who comes to his rescue, and that was a cutoff where the other husky cut off the Malamute from harassing this little dog. But what might have happened if this little dog didn't have a friend to protect him? And so small dogs should only be in the small dog area for your own dog's safety. And do not take puppies to the dog park. So if you look at the rules, at least for Rancho San Rafael Park, dogs younger than 4 months are not permitted in the area. And so they say because they don't have all their shots yet, which is super important because they can get some kind of a doggy disease being at the dog park. They're not fully vaccinated, but it's also because of the fact that puppies can be ruined for life by one bad dog park visit. And so here's this young puppy and this Doberman. Now, to the owners, I guess it looks like play, but if you look closely at this little puppy, this puppy is not playing. This puppy is very scared and stressed, and now he's being surrounded by other dogs. And so look at his body language and look at this unrelentlessness from this Doberman. And now we have another dog getting in on the mix. So this incident at this dog park can be it. That alone can ruin this dog, and this dog will forever be afraid of other dogs and might show aggressive behavior as the dog feels he has to defend himself from another dog who comes near. Don't take your puppies to the dog park. Don't take young children and babies to the dog park. There's other places you can take your children. It's not safe to have young children and babies at the dog park with dogs racing around. Okay? And young kids are inappropriate with dogs. They're inappropriate with their own dogs. And oftentimes little kids get bitten in the face because they're doing something inappropriate or scary around the dog that's even used to them. You do not want them interacting with dogs that you don't know if they are good with kids or how they're going to react if your kid screams or if your kid gets in their face. Don't take your kids to the dog park. It's for your dogs. Don't let your dog hump others relentlessly. Humping is normal dog behavior. And, oftentimes you'll see a hump and the other dog turns around, rah, and it's okay, and it's over. So, quick humps, that's part of dog play sometimes. But when your dog is relentlessly humping another dog, or another dog is relentlessly humping your dog, that can trigger a fight. And so don't let it happen. Don't let it happen with your dog. Don't let your dog do it, and don't let your dog be the victim of relentless humping. And don't let your dog crowd a new dog at the entrance. This is the place that a lot of fights happen because the dogs see a new dog coming in, they all rush to the entrance, and the new dog coming in is now faced with all of these dogs coming in. And so let's watch this video where this happens. So here's a guy who's bringing his little beagle into the dog park. So he's entering the lock cage, and so that nobody escapes, closes that gate. He takes the leash off of his dog. The other dogs are circling around. The owners are there, but they're not getting a hold of their dogs. And when the poor little beagle is let in, first gets charged by another dog and cornered, and now this dog is feeling very stressed and afraid, and now we have two dogs harassing this poor beagle. Don't let this happen. Here comes a third dog. This dog, again, this might be it. Now they're going to the dog park and they're approaching the gate, and their body goes low and their tail tucks, and they're scared. They don't want to go into the dog park because of what happened when the dog was accosted at the entrance. You want to socialize, not traumatize. So if you look at this picture, if you look closely at the dog in the front and how stressed that dog is, we see the ears back and the mouth closed, and we see tension in that face while these other dogs are chasing him. And so don't let your dog get traumatized, and don't let your dog traumatize others. So here is a video of a dog who is being terrorized at the dog park, this young doodle. who is very scared. His owners don't even realize that he's afraid of these two huskies that are kind of harassing him, not playing. Look at the defensive snapping. His mouth is open with his commissures back. His ears are back. His tail is tucked. He's really threatened. And then the same dog who's looking for help. He's trying to get somebody to help him. I don't even know if this is his owner. He's trying to get someone to help him because he's so afraid.
You can't? You feel safe? Not even a little thing?
Dogs and cats only. They
I guess they're afraid of a tree or something.
Now they're chasing. Here comes more dogs chasing him.
Whoa!
It's fine.
Let her roll.
And everybody's laughing, and the owner says, "It's fine." It's not fine. That dog was just traumatized. And that dog will forever be afraid of dogs because of that. And the owners don't even know what's happening to their own dog. Another terrorized dog. Again, so if we look at the tan dog, the darker tan dog, look at his body language. And see those little, his tail is low and his hackles are up by the base of his tail. His ears are back. He's very defensive. His corners of his mouth are back. He's showing all his teeth. He's stress panting. He is feeling very scared. So again, these things happen all the time, and people standing around, they don't see it because they don't bother to learn how to read body language. Don't let your dog bully other dogs or be bullied by other dogs. Know what's going on in the dog park with your dog. You must not let this happen, right? This poor little pitty mix is being harassed by these two dogs, and nobody's coming to his rescue. They're taunting him, they're grabbing him, they're just harassing and bullying this poor little dog. And he's terrified. And here comes another dog. So now we got 3 dogs on one, because dogs do tend to group up when they see what they think is interesting. But this dog is now going to fear other dogs. And so they see the stress panting. This dog is very, very anxious. I know this is hard to watch, but you saw someone's legs. You see someone filming. It's like, this is not okay. This dog doesn't think that they're playing. This dog thinks that she's going to be killed. So don't let that happen to your dog, and don't let your dogs do that to another dog. Right? Again, no body language. Know when a dog is being threatened. So watch this dog here in the foreground, the tan with the white neck. Watch his body language. He's stiff with a high flag tail. Look at the other dog. Ears back, mouth closed, ears pulled back, trying to get away. If this is your dog, get him out of there. He's threatening other dogs. Here he is again, threatening another dog. And so stiff body, high flag tail. And so the other dog is now defensively snapping in the air. Again, this is not okay. This is not play. This is threatening behavior, and dogs are learning to be afraid of other dogs at the dog park. Also, if you look at the same dog and how he faces off with another dominant dog, they're both stiff, and this is where a fight is going to happen. And so you pay attention to your dogs. Now the husky's trying to do the chin over, which is a sign of dominance, then puts the paw over. The other one gets defensive. These two dogs could easily start a fight. Know the body language. Now, fights do happen at dog parks. Now, luckily, most fights are just a lot of noise. They're easy to stop, and nobody gets hurt. Because dogs can have arguments. Hey, that hurt. Rah. All right. Or, hey, don't hump me anymore. Rah. It's like an argument. It sounds terrible. It looks scary, but nobody gets hurt. It lasts a few seconds. You can easily stop it by yelling or whatever, but nobody's getting hurt. That does happen at the dog park, but it is important that you know how to stop a fight before it starts. Number one, and most important, understand dog body language and always watch your dog and the other dogs interacting with your dog. And if you see tension, make a loud noise. You can yell, yo, or my favorite is yell, cookie, because most dogs hear the word cookie and they stop what they're doing and they run over for a cookie. Now, you don't have to have a cookie because bringing treats into the dog park can cause problems too. You can carry a whistle with you and blow the whistle. The idea is do something that would stop the dogs right where there's tension. So those last two dogs, I would have done it right there. And then both of those dogs would have come out of the dog park if I was in charge. Now, when it's not prevented, we often can have an injurious dog fight. So I'm just giving you a warning that this is a video of a dog fight. The dog doesn't get seriously injured. It sounds terrible, but I want you to see what happens when these two dogs start fighting. The melee of all the other dogs join.
Juno! Juno! Grab his back legs. Grab his back legs. Pull him straight out.
Okay, so what should have happened? First of all, if your dog is not involved, get your dog out of the mix. You saw how all those dogs ran to this fight, and you just run and get your dog and secure your dog on a leash, because now we have a dog who's being attacked and we have all these other dogs surrounding. They might join in, but just their presence is very, very scary. Do not reach between the dogs because you will be bitten. Okay, so you don't ever reach between the mouths of two fighting dogs. Don't hit or kick the dogs because that's only going to increase the arousal. It actually doesn't stop the fight. And obviously, do not use lethal force, which has happened here in Reno. You want to be prepared. So when you go to the dog park, you want to have some things that you could use to break up a dog fight. First, a pet corrector, which is a can of compressed air, and it blows out the air. It's just air, it's harmless, but it's startling. Or spray shield, which is a can of compressed citronella. Citronella is a harmless substance. Dogs don't like the smell of it. It's also a startle when you spray that into the dog fight. And if those aren't working, have yourself a little air horn and beep that air horn, because that usually is enough to stop most fights. If those don't work, you can try to pull the dogs apart by the back of their collar. Don't stick your hands in the mix. Get the back of the collar and pull that dog away from that other dog. All right. Now, what about the wheelbarrow method? You noticed in that video, someone said, pull him by his back legs. Well, that worked in that case, thank goodness. But this can be a tricky thing to do because you need two people, one on each dog, who have impeccable timing, 1, 2, 3, pull, and they pull the dogs apart. And you got to be careful where you pull because you could yank and pull their cruciate ligament, and now they need a $3,000 surgery. You got to keep them wheelbarrowed, otherwise they could spin around and redirect onto you. So it is a technique you can use, but you have to be aware of the preciseness of it. You also have to be aware that you would not do this if the dog is latched onto the other dog. So if the dog grabs hold of the other dog and won't let go, like what happened here in that fight, And the person said, pull him by the back leg. Now, luckily the dog let go, but sometimes if you're trying to do that and the dog is latched onto the other dog and won't let go, you're going to do more physical damage to the bitten dog because you're just pulling him away and he's not going to let go. So, as unpleasant as it sounds, the better way to get this dog to let go of the other dog, get behind him, take the collar, and twist the collar so he can't breathe. You're not going to kill him. You're not strangling him. You're just cutting off his airway for a second because then when he can't breathe, he's going to go and take a big breath, and that's going to release from the other dog, and then you get him out of there. Now, if that dog doesn't have a collar on, you have your leash with you. Come from behind, put that leash underneath that dog's neck, and then do the same thing with the leash. The idea is when you cut off their airway, they can't breathe, they stop to get a breath, and then you can get them off the other dog. Now, if your dog has ever attacked another dog or was the victim of an attack, do not go to the dog park, period. All right. And also remember the rules. So, this rule is aggressive or vicious dogs are not permitted in this area. Dogs must be leashed and removed at the first signs of aggression or rough play. Follow the rules. If it's your dog, well, get him out of there before he hurts somebody or before he or she gets hurt. Now, there are alternatives to the dog park for dog socialization. Here in Reno, we have Dizzy Lizzie's Dog Park, which is a private dog park where you can pay, I think it's $25 for half a day, and you have the entire park to yourself, where you and your dogs and your kids, if you want, and your friends, you can rent the space for a half a day or a whole day, and your dog can run free in the desert and be safe because it's completely fenced in. So if you're here in Reno, check out Dizzy Lizzie's. But also just play dates with family and friends and neighborhood dogs. That's going to be a better bet because you're going to know all the dogs. Just take turns going to each other's houses and using each other's yards. Or if only one of you has a fenced yard, you always meet there. That's going to be better. And even leash walks with other dogs is very good for the dogs. And so they don't have to have off-leash play. They don't have to go to the dog park. But if you do go to the dog park, make sure you're paying attention. Now, what should you do if you're walking your dogs on leash and an unleashed dog approaches and you're afraid that that dog might hurt your dogs? Right? So what are you supposed to do? Well, the first thing I tell people is to carry an umbrella so that you can do the umbrella trick. And the idea is a dog is coming towards you and your other dogs, and you just pop open the umbrella, and it usually scares the dog off, and then you can use it to protect you and your other dogs by using it as a shield. And so, of course, we're here in Nevada, and people think I'm crazy when I go for a walk with my umbrella, but I carry an umbrella all the time. We did get rain yesterday, and so you wouldn't look too weird yesterday, but most of the time you might look weird, but it's a good thing to have on you when you're walking your dogs. All right, the other thing you can have with you is the spray shield I talked about before. It's a can of compressed citronella. The dog starts coming towards you and your dog, you can just spray it and keep them out of your zone. Hopefully they just run off. So what does your dog deserve? Your dog deserves a life filled with plenty of physical, mental, and social stimulation, and this can include social time with other dogs for many dogs. But they also deserve a life free from terror, injury, and death from other dogs because you didn't understand your dog's emotional state at the time, whether your dog was the aggressor or the victim. Be a good dog owner. Pay attention to your dog at home, on walks, and especially at the dog park. Pay attention to your dog. Okay, so that's the end of my dog park safety talk. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot and you will take what you learned and make sure that you watch your dog and don't let anything bad happen to your dog. Okay, here's my email if you have any questions. Thank you and goodbye.